While the sails are coming down and the cannon is about to sound, we are down to our final of 5 shows that we presented on the story of sailing. This program is a production of the Ministry of Agriculture and Marine Resources in conjunction with the Broadcasting Corporation of the Bahamas. In this final show, the question is, should sailing be considered the national sport?
All right, what do you think should be the national sport of the Bahamas?
I think the national sport of the Bahamas should be sailing.
Well, I think the national sport should be sailing.
Okay, tell me why.
Because of its economic impact.
Well, it's an all-around thing in the Bahamas, and well, for every island competes in this one sport in reference to sailing.
As well as we get a lot of tourists come in. I think that's it. I mean, what more, especially in a time like this, what more could you want?
All right, what do you think should be the national sport of the Bahamas?
Sailing.
Why?
Because it's a good cultural event. It brings all the islands together.
Okay, so what do you think should be the national sport of the Bahamas?
I obviously think it's sailing.
Okay, so why do you think sailing should be the national sport?
It's regatta. That's what regatta is all about.
That's the question, and we are in for smooth sailing tonight as I have some of the top skippers in the country on the panel. The conversation tonight is going to be interesting because joining me tonight, Dwayne Higgins, Stafford and Bristol, and Mr. Tony Knowles, Long Island Reed. And joining us by Zoom, where I should be right now, in Exuma, Danny Strong and Reg Smith. And we also in for a party tonight. DJ Rev is back for the final dance. Yes, he's here playing the music tonight. Entertainers, the queen of Junkanoo, Sweet Emily. And if she is the queen, then he must be the crown prince. And no, I ain't calling in sick to go to no regatta. Dylan D. McKenzie. Now, guys, let's get right to the topic right away. Why should sailing be considered the national sport?
It's enjoyed throughout the length and breadth of this country. Anyone can do it.
That's the only sport that I know that is indigenous to us in the Bahamas.
And I was going to take the very same approach historically. It's the only thing that ties the whole country together.
Before we get to Donnie and Reg, expand on that, because you were just right to the point. You're a sailor, so you may be biased.
Of course I am.
Of course.
Sailing is enjoyed throughout the Bahamas. You go to any creek, be out there, and it started with fishermen. You get the boys together. The next thing you know is, let's get on the boat and I could beat you. No, you can't beat me. The trash talking starts. We go out there and the competitiveness begins. And it's something that we all enjoy. I mean, we see the children and girls getting into it also. So very happy and excited about that and the future for sailing.
Stafford?
Well, Fisher, all of my life, I can remember we are connected by sailing. As a little boy going to school, and that's some time ago, we traveled from settlement to settlement by sailboats. We had no proper roads to go. We used to go sailboat to go fishing. We used sailboat to go visit the other islands. And that's the only thing that we used to and the one thing that we can do. And right now, that's the only thing Bahamians love to do is sail.
And once again, to elaborate, from the Lutheran adventurers and from Bahamians, of the first Bahamians, the colonists, moving from whether it's Eleuthera to Bermuda, traveling from the whole length of this whole country. It's the only thing that really ties us all together from as far back as we can recall to this point even now.
Let's bring Reg Smith and Donnie Strawn into this conversation. Donnie, you have a lot of literature on this sport. Why do you consider sailing the national sport?
Well, I consider sailing to be the national sport because it's a way of life for us. Going back into history, you remember when Columbus came here, he found the Arawaks, and the way they got around was through sailing, canoes, and everything else. And the fact is, I've been pushing for sailing to be the national sport for the past 15 years. I didn't take this lightly. I thought about it very seriously because when you think in terms of making a discipline, a national event, you have to think in terms of the rationale for it, the benefit for it, and what it is, that we as the people like. And for instance, you have far more people in this country watching and participating in sailing than cricket. And as far as the benefits are concerned, there's boat building. We want to preserve the boat building skills of Bahamians. We have everybody involved, musicians, vendors, people selling, stuff at these events. And the fact is that it is the only sport of this kind in the entire world, and that is sloop sailing in the Bahamas. I initially thought that it should be sloop sailing, but no, it should be sailing. And many of us don't know the fact that back in 1959, when the late Prince Philip attended the regatta and sailed on the Lady Muriel in the National Familiar Regatta in 1959, Bobby Simon, one of the founders of the event, said that sloop sailing should be the national sport of the Bahamas. So there's rationale, there's benefit, and there's opportunities. And the fact is, we need to get our communities to buy in. And they have in fact bought in. As Dwayne and Stafford and Tony have said, all over this Bahamas, people are enjoying and watching sailing. Nobody watches cricket or plays cricket. Cricket is blasé, it's sailing. And those are my thoughts and rationales for making sailing the national sport of the Bahamas.
Reg, let's hear your point.
Well, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. It's great to see you guys. Boy, we had to go to some extent to get Stafford and Tony, you and my good friend over there on the same stage. But here we are, guys. Yeah, I sincerely believe that sailing is the national sport. It shouldn't be. It is. And the reason I say that is it's an intrinsic part of our culture. Most of us who grew up in the Out Islands know exactly how much sailing meant to us. For example, it was our transportation. If you lived on an island like Exuma, you got from one end to the other not by roads, but by boat. Because we have three islands. We have Little Exuma and Great Exuma. If you were on Little Exuma and you needed to go to Georgetown shopping, you had to get in the boat and sail. If you lived on the east side of the island, you had a deep hull boat. If you lived on the south side, you had a flat called a spanker. And you did that from a child. Food. We ate on the island. We ate fish, was the main meat for us. And each settlement had at least one or two or three boats that went out every day and came back in with that 10 shillings worth of fish. So we depended on the boat. If you didn't have any engines, you had to sail out to the drop and you had to sail back. And I know about that because that's how I learned to sail. And then there was trade. Years ago, before the mail boats, the Bahamas was knitted together by sailing boats. If you've ever seen a picture of Woodes Rogers Drive, back in the day, before the cruise ships, you would be amazed at how many sailing vessels would tie up on Woodes Rogers Drive where the cruise ships are now. And they came from as far away as Turks and Caicos, Inagua, Long Island, Abaco, Andros. As a matter of fact, one of the only sports in the Bahamas that has a song written about sailing is written about itself is sailing, and that's Run Come See, which was a tragedy on boats going from Nassau back to Andros with people on board, and that's a great old anthem that we all sailors should know. And so racing became a sport from these fishermen, and I can tell you in Georgetown, Danny would not like this story, but I'm going to tell you. We had a couple of boats. My dad had one. Hector Smith had one. Buzzy's daddy had one. And the slowest of them all was Danny's dad's boat. I forget the name of that boat, Danny. but she could barely beat through the College Cup. And we, there he is. Don't say a word, Daniel.
Okay,
But
we're
we would go-
we're into
we
some
would-
story. We're gonna hear some great stories
Yeah.
tonight, but I'm still not convinced that sailing should be the national sport. At present, it is cricket. And if we look at any new question, Bahamas, they'll say track and field is bringing all the medals. We have players in the NBA. We have players in the NFL. We have this and that. What does sailing do? Sell me it. I don't think sailing is the national sport. Tony, Stafford, Dwayne. Donnie, sailing is not the national sport. I want to know why.
Well, Mr. Fisher, listen to this. The first gold medal that we got from the Olympics came from sailing, right? That was sailing at its best. You was at the Olympic level. And as was mentioned before, it was a way of life for us. That's how we survive. We travel the length and breadth of the Bahamas through sailing. You come to Nassau to bring your conch, your crawfish, and your crabs from Andres by sailing. And if you ask a child in school now how to play cricket, they can't tell you. How to play basketball or baseball, you have to go and teach them. There are some guys from Long Island, only 2 feet tall, and they sail in boats. They come into regatta and they're beating up on Dwayne, them winning races.
More than me.
So
Is that Dwayne?
Beating up more than me.
So sailing is the thing, and it's something that you don't have to go to school to get a BJC for or GCE for. You just come out on the beach, we call it on the bay, come out on the beach, say to your daddy, your big brother, whatnot, I want to go sailing. And in a couple of weeks, that boy or that girl is sailing. Look at Dayoshi. All those races that she won. Training right there in Staniel Key through sailing. Now, the fellas, I'm not taking anything away from the guys who did the basketball and all of those, but they had to go to school, they had to college, they had to go to degree, they had to get sponsorship and all of that. Sailing is right here not in our backyard anymore, it's in our lap.
As a teacher, go ahead, Dwayne.
Yeah, but let's go even further. You talk about the lifeblood of the country. Literally, regattas and sailing through that means has kept a lot of these communities alive. And not only that, it's gone into, you can literally see the culture of Abaco. You can see the loyalist experience influence in Abaco and Long Island through the designs of those boats. You see the culture, the characteristics of Andros, whether it's North Andros, the deeper draft boats, the shallower ones as you come down south and so forth. You literally get a snapshot just by looking at the boats. And sailing definitely duplicates that for all of us. So as Bahamians, you literally get to see your country just by looking out at the different characters and the different characteristics of the sailboats that are there.
A question coming in, Tony. I can't afford a sailboat, so why should it be considered a national sport? They're expensive.
They are expensive. You hit on some interesting points, though. And my fellow panel guests here, we talked about sailing, the history of sailing. You talked about we have Bahamians in the NBA and track and field and everything else. When we go back into a little piece of history on the first gold medal, what Stafford said came through Sodowit and sailing. However, today we still are competing very effectively. They're Gavin McKinney. And there's others that names not coming to me right now, but they're winning. And they're out there still going on. So the single biggest area of growth for sports and medals, I still believe, belongs in sailing. And we have the ingredients to put it together for the country to take over sailing globally. And we have the best waters in the world. We have some of the brightest minds in sailing. I would really like to see what would happen if we had the likes of Raleigh Gray get out there and compete with sailors like Sodowit did, or Stephen Knowles. I really believe that if given the opportunity, there's so much more room to bring the gold home in the Bahamas. And it is sailing, and I support that. It's in my blood. I just can't help it.
Well, we're going to continue this discussion right after the break, but it's time to give out some prizes. Our first question, what year, and I don't want none of you guys to answer it, what year was Aunt's Nest built? You'll get a $100 gift certificate sponsored by Janae's, and you can WhatsApp your answer to 424 5311. No calls, WhatsApp message only, and be sure to leave your name. And to continue our conversation on whether sailing should be the national sport, joining us now, Stephen Knowles, Jimmy Lowe, Reverend Dr. Philip Murphy. And by Zoom, out of Exuma, we have Dwight Hart, and out of Grand Bahama, Margaret Tatum Aubrey. Everybody, welcome to the Story of Sailing. Rev, you've been here before, and congratulations, 30th anniversary, pastoring last night. Stephen, anyone you can start it off. Why should sailing be considered a national sport?
Charles, it's good to be here on the program tonight. Sailing has been around in this country from its inception. All of us, our ancestors, got here through sailing, either from Europe or Africa or any other part of the world. We have continued that tradition throughout the islands of transport, of livestock, food, to greet people. You hear stories on the islands about the older men talking about courting women. They sail a boat to one island for the weekend and come back. You know, so sailing has been around from generation to generation, and we are a group of islands. And we should embrace sailing as a national sport, if only for that fact.
Jimmy?
Yeah, thanks for having me here tonight. We were discovered by sailboats back in 1492. But I think that the most important thing is to get our youth involved, and which we've been trying to do, and we've been doing for the last 14 years. And that's the most important thing. I've had opportunities to travel all over the world sailing, and I'd like the young kids to be able to do that as well, because traveling is the best education anybody could have. So I think that that's really important. And like Stephen said, it's just a part of us from the beginning.
Wait to hear your answer now, Ralph.
Well, history has given us a very clear picture about sailing in the Bahamas. While we were at school, they taught us that sailors came into the Bahamas for, like you heard, 1492 or beyond that. But Bahamian sailing is something completely different. It's unique. It brings the flavor and splendor of both water and land. And it gives us the opportunity to meet other islanders. When we first heard about the first regatta, the majority of the boats that went to that first regatta in Exuma came out of Andros, and it was over 100 boats. Long Island was very much involved, and Exuma became very much involved. But the Elizabeth Harbor was chosen by men who travel around the Bahamas and saw all of the various harbors. And so sailing got started like that because of the sponging and the fishing. And while they passed each other going forward, back and forth, they would shout out, when the season is over, let's find out which island has the fastest boat. Rupert Knowles and W.G. McPhee and Raleigh Gray. They were the prominent names in sailing at that time who had an idea of how to organize regattas. And so from that point to this, we now cherish this opportunity to focus and to bring together, as you heard a few seconds ago, the importance of bringing a new flavor to sloop sailing and to international sailing. And that's what we are keen about. That's why we want it to be the national sport, because there's nothing else in the Bahamas that unifies us as sailing in the Bahamas.
Let's get Dwight and Margaret in here. Good evening. Welcome to the story of sailing. Your point on why it should be. Dwight?
I'm gonna allow the lady to go first, so Margaret, go ahead, please.
Hi, thank you for having me. When you look at a national sport of any country, one of the things that is characteristic of it is that it is an intrinsic part of the national culture of the people. Sailing is the only sport that is an intrinsic part of us. For all the reasons that Danny gave, that Reg gave, that Dr. McPhee gave, that Stefan gave, and that Lo gave. And, you know, it's an intrinsic part of who we are. We're an archipelago. We're a set of islands. Historically, that's how we communicated. Historically, sailing was our lifeblood. Now we could sit here and we could have a discussion as to whether it's sloop sailing or it's the other sailing. And I said we could have a discussion. I do believe, and for my part, sloop sailing would come out victorious there as the national sport, because again, sailing is an intrinsic part of who the people of the country is. If you look at the national sport of Canada, it's lacrosse. How many people play lacrosse? How competitive is lacrosse? Well, perhaps it is very competitive. Have you ever heard of a sport called copeira? It's like a fighting dance. That's the national sport of Brazil. What about sumo wrestling? That says Japan. Anywhere you go and you see that, you don't have to have the country's name. You have to have that. And our sailing, our sloop sailing, is so unique and such an integral part of who we are as a people. It has to be.
Go ahead, Dwight.
Well, you know, thanks again for having me on the show. I'm happy to be a part of a sailing conversation. Certainly, it's been a while. And so I'm just going to piggyback off almost everything that's already been said. I think Stefan kind of coined it perfectly, the way he said it. You know, our ancestors came to this country, whether from Europe, whether from Africa, by boat. So it's in our blood. Margaret was just, again, talking about the various countries and how they identified the national sports that they're identified by. Sloop sailing is something that is unique to the Bahamas, unique to Bahamians. It brings us all together. I think, by far and large, regattas pull more people together in one spot than any other sport that we have going on right now. And so, in addition to the competitiveness of the sailing, the cultural aspect of it, I think, has certainly taken a grip on Bahamians, and more young people are getting involved. And so I think one way to encourage it is obviously to make it the national sport, so that we then put more emphasis on it in our schools. You know, I have a 12-year-old right now who's just got himself involved, and you know, and it is just really gratifying to see him take up sailing and enjoy it so much. And so I want to encourage that, and you know, if just for him and the others that are going to come, I think we should get the move going to make sailing the national sport. Certainly, from where I sit as the chairman of the Roval Regatta, it would be a very joyous thing to see that happen.
You gave a lot of history about sailing back when you bring in this and bring in that, but cricket as a national sport now can also say it came here when the forefathers came here as well. So they have an argument as well.
Well, the argument that they would have,
I have to differ with that.
the argument that they might have is from a West Indian point of view. But when you talk about the actual involvement of competition, it kind of brings together a more understanding of how the history of sloop sailing began. Our national sport is not sloop sailing, but sailing.
Correct.
Not sloop sailing, but sailing. It gathers more attention from the Bahamian dialect and position because of us building our boats. I don't believe we build any international boats.
Not right now, no.
But we build our boats. In fact, there are 4 brand new boats being built as we now speak, so that they will sail for the first time in this year. Bahamians build it without computers. So the sensitivity of it comes from linkage to islands. Ragged Island build their boats different, Andros build different, Long Island build different, and Exuma build different. So it is a language and perception of how we would want boat building, boat sailing, boat rigging to become, and unified it in one organization to make it our national sport.
I heard Margaret trying to get in there, but Margaret, hold that point until after this, because you, Jimmy, and Stefan, I have some more questions to you that just coming. But it's time for some entertainment tonight, and she's looking beautiful. The queen of junk canoe is back, Sweet Emily. Woo.
Whoa! This me now. Huh. This is the last examination. This time I put you to the test. This is the final competition. It's time to show who's the best. You see, I hear all the noise you making. I hear every word you say. There's only one thing I got to show you. It's when I shake up my body, woo, work up my body, yuck up my body. Let me hear you say, Sweet Emily, you better clear the way. Yes, ma, 'cause I am meant to stay. Sweet Emily, only one like me. The only queen of junk canoe is me. Woo! This me now. Oh, 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 oh. Woo! Watch it now. Listen to this, Charles. It doesn't matter how you do it. It doesn't matter where you go. It only come to one conclusion. That I'm the one to rock the show. I'm bringing music to make you jump up. I'm bringing rhythm to make you dance. Just take a look how the people jump up. Each time I shake up my body. Oh, work up my body. Oh, yuck it up. Oh, let me hear you say, Sweet Emily, you better clear the way. Yes, mom, 'cause I am meant to stay. Sweet Emily, only one like me. The only queen of junk canoe is me. Sweet Emily, you better clear the way. Yes, boy, 'cause I am meant to stay. Oh, there is one like me. The only queen of junk canoe, that's me.
Now, why you wanna touch the crowd? You better sit down before I bum rush you, crush you.
On stage, you moving like a clown, talking like no one can touch you.
She got style finesse, so you write a whole name across her chest.
E-M-I-L-Y, yeah, that's me. There's only one number one, shining bright like Bahamian sun. Sweeter than sugar plus tempting. Here's the lady B
representing.
Woo! So you better test the skill. Jungle queen,
dress to kill.
Woo!
So you better clear the way.
The queen has got to stay. Hey, hey! Yeah, who caused this? Queen coming through. Watch it. Listen to this. Lift the judgment to the people and let the music be the test. See what rhythm make them happy, and time will take care of the rest. Just recognize the one who's the leader. Respect the one who's in front. If you continue to bring the pressure, then I will shake up my body. Oh, work it up. Oh, yuck it up. Oh, let me hear you say, Sweet Emily, you better clear the way. Yes, girl, 'cause I am meant to stay. Sweet Emily, only one like me. The only queen of junk canoe is me. Sweet Emily, you better clear the way. 'Cause I am meant to stay. only one like me, the only.
Well, before we continue our conversation, once again, the trivia question: what year was the Ants Nest built? You can win yourself a $100 gift certificate sponsored by Janice. WhatsApp your answers to 424-6311. And we also going to give you the second question for tonight. Name the two sailors who represented the Bahamas in sailing at the 1964 Tokyo Olympics. And you can win yourself a Esso gas voucher sponsored by the Long Island Association. The number, once again, 424-6311. And before we went into that fine entertainment by Sweet Emily, Margaret Taylor Morby was when I said about the history, and we did with our cricket. But let's talk now about sailing in terms of what's happening with sports today. Is sailing a sport? Some may say sailing is not a sport.
Definitely, Charles. Sailing is a sport all around the world. In just about every country, you have international events that happen almost weekly. Since the pandemic, obviously things have changed a lot. Here in the Bahamas, we have regattas between February and October for just about every other week in a different island of the Bahamas. And all of the sailors are looking forward to the return of the regattas, because it leaves a big void in all of us, because we can't get out on the water and to compete and to mingle with our friends from all the different islands, from Abaco to Eleuthera to Andros. I mean, people are always asking me when I go to these islands, when are we going to have regatta again? When am I going to see sailboats race again? So it's something that Bahamians at large really do enjoy, and they miss it during this pandemic.
Jimmy, you deal basically with youth and a different type of sailing from Stefano. And we're talking about making sailing the national sport. Is the future of the sport in good hands?
Yeah, I think so. I know the Bahamas Sailing Association, which is what we're affiliated with. We have taken the approach to go after the youth. Our future is in the youth. Stefan and Rev might not want to know it, but our young sailors are going to take over the sloop sooner or later.
Yeah, they are now.
They are the ones that are going to take it over, right? So I think we're teaching them the right way. There are many opportunities for all of our kids to compete abroad. And, a lot of people talk about Olympics and going to the Olympics and stuff like that. That is, I wouldn't say pie in the sky, but it's a very big undertaking. And the reason is that it's very expensive. I know back in 2012, the British Sailing Organization did an analysis, and to get somebody to the Olympics, it costs $100,000 per year per athlete for the quad, the 4 years leading up to the Olympics. So if you had a one-person boat, that's $400,000 for them to get to the Olympics. Because it's such a elimination, there's so many nations that want to sail that you have to go through the process of elimination, attend all the world championships, attend the qualifiers in order to qualify, because the Olympics now don't give you one boat per country. For instance, the Star boat, before it got out of the Olympics, only 16 countries were allowed in the Olympics out of 40 plus that were trying to qualify for those 16 places. And the Olympics have become so big that they had to cut back allocation to all different sports in order to get more sports in,
So let's get Margaret in here now. And Margaret, you were talking, I heard you in the background when I was saying that cricket has more history than sailing. You seem to differ.
Right. Charles, I go back to my point, and I think sometimes why we're always in this discussion is that we don't, in my estimation, we don't identify what we consider to be a national sport. Cricket is legally our national sport, but it is something from our colonial past. And if we are going to, if that is the road we decide that we would like to go, we want to identify with and call it part of us, what our colonial past is, then unfortunately that's a road that we'll take. I don't subscribe to it. I think where we get mixed up sometime is that when you're talking about a national sport, I go back to my original thing. It should be a part of who we are. You shouldn't. I remember Phil Smith one time saying to me, how many scholarships does sailing do? How softball does this? Basketball does this. That is not the point. The point of a national sport is to reflect the people. I don't think we want to be reflected as our colonial masters were. I honestly don't think we are. I think we want to be reflected in something that is us. Now, we talk about the type of sailing. Yes, we can make it sailing, but we can make it sloop sailing, and not to negate the sailing club and the Olympic sailing, so to speak. It's not going to negate that, but it is going to reflect who the people are of this particular country, of this archipelago, sloop sailors. And another thing, and then I'll let someone else chime in, is I think also when we're arguing, we get mixed up with regatta and sailing. The regatta is the thing that we have on the bay, the thing that we have in the communities. The sailing is out on the water in the draw. And sometimes I think for clarity, we need to separate them. Regatta is not going to be the national sport. And I think that's why, Charles, you asked whether regatta is a sport. No, regatta is not. Regatta is a beautiful party on the bay that helps the communities. But we're talking about a sport, and sloop sailing is for sure a sport. And it reflects us.
Dwight or Stefan or Mark Field?
I want
to... that was a whole lot of debate just now.
Yeah, I want to make something very clear. Before we had the onshore activities, we had sailing.
That's right.
The on-side activities recently became involved in sailing, which incorporated
for it to be a regatta.
To be a regatta. Right now, our nation says there'll be no regatta. But our nation cannot say there'll be no sailing.
Good point.
So we must now be very careful when we talk about what a national sport. Because when you talk about a national sport, it brings into it opportunities and also the responsibility to take care of a national sport. That's why it cannot be sloop sailing by itself. It must be a universal grouping of sailing in the Bahamas, which we have projected from way back yonder. There was no problem in allowing the sloop sailing to have their fun and the internationals to have their fun. And when the celebration comes, both internationally or sloop sailing, we all celebrate it. That's why it become a national sport.
Dwight, you want to chime in on this before we get to Jimmy?
Yeah, well, I guess I have to agree a little bit with, and certainly the clarity and clarifying that regattas of the regatta. Well, we say regatta is not sailing, but yeah, I think we're still kind of mixing up a little bit, because the regatta, in my estimation, is the art of, or the activity that includes the competitive sailing. So it's a regatta. The onshore activities come with the homecoming type part of it. So I think we still have to get, be clear on exactly what it is that we are trying to, when we're trying to coin what it is that we're trying to do for national sport. So, but I agree with Margaret, I agree with Rev, that it is the sailing, right? And, Margaret certainly was pushing the sloop sailing aspect of it, which I'm actually fully 100% in support of. But like I mentioned earlier, my young son has just taken up sailing, but he's sailing in the opti and the other types of sailing. And so that is where the development of the sailing skills need to start. And so we obviously are going to have to include all aspects of sailing if we decide to make sailing the national sport of the Bahamas. So, and I think that we could do it. We could be all inclusive with all manners of sailing. And whether it culminates in some, some Bahamians going off and sailing on the international scene, going to the Olympics or participating in all of these other world events around, like so Durant Knowles did and many others, or some of them just staying home and participating in the smooth sailing aspect of it. The mere fact that we make sailing itself the national sport, I think we can find a way to mash them all together and work everybody.
Boy, it looks like we need another show this final episode, but this discussion looks like it's going to carry on for a while. We're going to let Jimmy talk and then Stephen wrap it up.
The point I'd like to make is that we can't isolate. There are not a lot of kids involved in the sloop sailing right now, right? And we're bringing kids along. So you can't take that segment of the population and say, this is not sloop, so you can't be a part of the national sport. So I think what Rev said and what Mr. Hart said, sailing, it has to be sailing, not regattas, not just sloops, because everybody identifies the sloops with regattas. I mean, that's the norm right now, today. It wasn't like that before, but that's what it is today. So, we have to make sailing the national sport.
Stephanie, from a youngster, you were sailing, you probably sailed on the Optimus, now you're sailing with the big boys. You should be more understanding of what they're trying to bring across.
Well, I think, Charles, I agree with Mr. Lowe's point. It has to be sailing, because in the sloop sailing world, it's a lot more difficult for kids to learn the art of sailing, because you're on boats typically with, in the C class you have 5 men most of the time. In the B class you have up to 10, and the A class you have up to 15. So it's a lot more difficult, and it takes a longer time for an individual kid to learn all of the rules and the tactics and the race, because you would not be able to hold the tiller. For me, I was fortunate when I was growing up, because my dad had sailboats, my brother had sailboats, so I was able to hold the tiller very quickly. So I was a lot ahead of a lot of the other kids my age. But during my time, we also had lasers. I missed the proms completely. I started off really racing lasers, and my brothers had a sloop boat that we would take and race in the sound, sometimes even without their permission. And that's how we kind of learned how to sail back in my day. But nowadays, all the young kids, you can go in an Optimus, one person, one boat, and each kid could learn the rules and how to race. And then collectively, as they grow up and get older, they could form a team into a sloop with 8, 9, 10 people, where everybody is kind of understanding of the rules and the sport, even though it's a slightly different type of sailing. Once everybody understands the sport, even as a team, you could switch the captain, because everybody understands how to steer the boat. But in our sport, it's a lot more difficult. A lot of the older guys that race right now, many of them can't just jump to the tiller. They're used to being a bowman, or they used to being a main sheet man or a prime man. A lot of them are afraid to jump to the tiller because they're not used to that. And I wouldn't say it's difficult, but it can be very challenging and scary if you don't have much experience in handling that tiller on those sloop boats. On the other hand, on a laser or a sunfish, it's not as intrusive. It's a little bit easier to get used to it, because it's only you and maybe one other person.
Well, we're going to take a break here, boy. This is a very interesting topic tonight. And some people might still make me say, I still don't see why sailing should be the national sport. We're going to have much more coming up after this break.
Say,
Well, we have our trivia winners for tonight. 2000, that was the year the Ants Nest was built. Ricardo Penn is the winner of that. And Sedurwood and Cecil Cook in the Olympics. The winner of that is Clinton Roll, and you can pick up your gifts, from the Ministry of Agriculture and Marine Resources. This is a short segment, 30 seconds each. Your push for why sailing should be the national sport, Tony?
I think it brings the energy and excitement like no other sport, bar none. I really appreciate the panel before us just now. When Jimmy said that Challenge Stephen and Revenue says out of the optees would become the next winners. They walk in the sloops and they will beat you at that. And that's the pool of resources that we need to build from. Just like the NFL pulls from college, we'll pull from these junior sailing programs. I'm excited.
Stafford?
Yeah, okay. My excitement is getting the kids in the school. We already started in the school at the 7th grade level. We can even go a lower level once we get the permission from the government. And one of the reasons why I think we should become a national sport, because all Bahamians right now, they are interested in sailing. And I mean sailing straight across the board.
Right?
Once again, it ties the culture, it ties the talent, the abilities, and it also provides opportunities now that it hadn't 20 years ago. My nephew is over in Virginia now, and he's going to be heading to Italy later on through sailing. And that's why we actually have a platform that we can actually take it to the next level.
That's a trivia question for us, Trio. Do you think Reg and Donnie could give us 30 seconds?
Never.
Reg, get 30 seconds on why. Reg, 30 seconds on why sailing should be the national sport.
Because it is the only sport that we can trace back to our beginnings as a nation. It's because it's the only sport that helped build this nation. Because it's the only sport that we lived on, we depended on for our lives.
Donnie?
It's our way of life. And it's a sport that was born, bred, and grew here in the Bahamas. It's not an imported sport. So we can't think in terms of basketball or any other thing for a national sport. It is the national sport, which is probably enjoyed and supported by almost 100% Bahamians all over this country.
We'd like to thank everybody for being a part of this panel tonight. We'd also like to thank everybody who made this 5-part series possible. It's been interesting. I'm now convinced that, and I shouldn't say it, sailing should be the national sport whenever that is done. Should. I'm a journalist. I'm a journalist, so it shouldn't be done. But I know one thing that we all can be a show off. I getting ready to go to regatta, and guess what? I ain't got to call in sick. And who's going to lead us out on here tonight?
So you lying like D-Mac?
D-Mac. Let's go, D-Mac. Let's go to regatta.
Regatta time.
Let's go, Rev. Y'all get about your seat. Y'all know what time it is. D-Mac in the building. Y'all ready? Hey, hey, hey. So I'm going to celebrate all of my Junkanoo people out there. This is what it's all about. Are you ready? Get ready. This is what Regatta is us stars. Okay, let's go. Let's go. Nothing can stop this energy. Man, who are we? Best group on Bay Street. Get out the way, cause you can't beat me. It's undeniably the greatest show on earth. Just bring that costume. Don't bring no trash.
Don't bring no trash.
Hey. No more excuses, nobody into that.
Now don't blame we.
Don't blame them judges if your music flat. Cause guess what? You better do this. Just bring your A game, cause ain't no slopping up. Get ready, move out the way for Saxons. Get out the way for Valley. What's on the line, one family. Genesis, and the one and only. Colors, let's go! Hey! Go! This is the greatest sound, but it going down. Junkanoo is the greatest sound, but it going down. Junkanoo is the #1, but it going down. So we are the champions. That's how it going down. Real! Go! You ready to do this? Get up on your seat. Let's go! Let's go! Hey! Start jumping! Start jumping! D-Mark and Mega. Say everybody jump. Fling them right, them up in the air. Push them, hand them up in the air. Fling them right, them up in the air. Let's go. Hey. Here we go. Sculling time. Regatta, let's go. Hey, hey. Oh, yeah. All right. Oh, yeah. Let's go. Hey. This lady walked to me with some problems on she mind. Said she work hard every day, now she want to unwind. She asked me where to go, tell me she want to get hot. I tell her if you want to know, there's only one sweet spot. To have a jam in time, let loose and wine is down by Regatta. That's right, Regatta time. To have a swing in time, to let loose and wine is down by Regatta side. Where we going? So what I do, I take her down. In the bush. Oh yeah, to have a real good time. In the bush. Guess what? To shake up and wine. In the bush. Ain't no one in your business. In the bush. Why? Cause everybody dancing. Hey. Let's go, man. Let's go, man. You ready to go? Where we going, Rob? Where we going? Let's go, man. Following doctor's orders, I going down to Regatta. Following. That's right. Whoa, whoa. Hey. Oh, yeah, yeah. Let's go. This me again, boss, don't hang up. I feel so bad, it really tough. Went to the doc and he tell me, boy, you got bronchitis allergy. He say, now boss, I really sick for true. This time I'm gonna need a week or two. I need you to advance my pay so I can fill my prescription today. Here we go. My doctor say, all around the lot, drink plenty liquid. Staying in bed ain't recommended. I following doc instructions, so but you can't get mad at me. No, no, no. Hey, hey.
Get the anchor ready. Get the anchor ready.
Hey, hey.
Get the anchor ready.
You ready?
Get the anchor ready.
You ready?
Get the anchor ready, man.
Let me see.
You
Let
ready,
me see.
man?
Stop it, you know how to do this. Let me see.
Anchor.
What's this? Pull up the anchor.